Erica, I got the Psalms.
Yeah, they look really good. I think this is a regular Xenology.
Yeah.
But still nice.
Yeah, beautiful.
Everybody's got a different glass, huh? I got the Fusion Air.
You got Fusion Air. I'm really actually, the Psalms are really like even nicer than I remembered when we first got them. I took them for the video, and they have the feel is nice, but even like the flow of the wine and hits the palate the right way. They're really well made.
So we'll get started in 7 minutes, and welcome anyone who's here now. And as we go along, feel free to ask us questions in the chat, and we'll all do our best to answer along with Josh. And thanks for joining.
Yeah. And if you happen to see children or dogs or anything running through anyone's video screen, this is all real and live. So all comes along with the territory.
Somebody's asking what your glass is, Marshall.
That is the Xenology Psalm glass. So this is a new line from Wine Enthusiast from us. That this is the cab version. There's a universal also, and it's got these really beautiful, almost like tulip lines, but this flat bottom, thin stem. They're definitely my new household favorite, as long as the kids aren't around to knock them down by accident.
Cool.
Yeah.
Where is everyone joining from? You want to drop us messages in the chat? What states are you in?
Oh, Valley.
California.
Cool.
California, Atlanta, Georgia. Oh, look at this. We're all over the place.
Is that Rhonda who has that? Rhonda, I'm gonna put the link in the chat for these glasses if you want to check them out.
I have the link if you want.
You have
I have the search link. Yep.
Yeah, put it right in the chat.
Go. It looks like I guess links are disabled, but if you can copy and paste that link.
Yeah. And by the way, all of the Xenology glasses that we have, they're all covered by our 10-year warranty too. So they're all free replacements if you break them, because they're really resistant and durable, even though they're thin-lipped and elegant. So it's a nice little bonus that we have on our Wine Enthusiast lines of stemware, Xenology and Fusion.
Cool. How do you beat that?
Yeah, can't. Can't beat it.
Break a glass, get a new one free.
That's it. So I'm just curious, does anyone, you can tell us in the chat, does anyone have the actual wines that we're tasting, or are we all kind of just sipping along and listening and learning?
We get them all.
All right.
Awesome.
Very nice.
And ready to go.
Sweet.
Cool.
Good. Thanks, Harry.
Awesome.
All right, we got 2 minutes, then we'll
2
officially.
minutes.
Let me go. I'm gonna go kick the kids off the internet. Give me a sec.
And what'll they do?
Yeah, and they'll be running around the screen.
Welcome, everybody. This is our first virtual wine tasting. Working from home, as are many of you. And so, instead of doing these videos at the office, figured we'd do a nice live tasting, let everybody join us, right? I don't know, I guess we're still waiting for more people to come in. We were asking about the weather, and I see some people have some beautiful weather. Others are dealing with terrible weather, but terrible weather is good for staying home and drinking some juice, right?
Yeah, right.
I'm your host, Josh Farrell, wine director for Wine Express. And we have some of the Wine Express team here. joining us and chiming in and helping out, and it should be fun. For those of you that don't know me, I'm somebody who's been in the wine business for about 30 years. Started out working in restaurants in New York City, and worked at a couple cool places. Worked at a really great place called America back in the 80s, which was like one of these first really big, like warehouse size restaurants. Sat over 400 people. And they had a great all-American wine list, which I was doing the buying for. A lot of fun. And then I worked at Windows on the World. I was a sommelier there. Actually started as assistant cellar master, worked my way up. And that was an incredible experience. Unbelievable place to experience and learn about wine. One of the really fun things about that job was selecting the wines for the Cellar in the Sky dinners. They had the restaurant within the restaurant, where they would do prefix dinners with 5 wines and 7 courses. And we pick out the wines, and the way we did it is because the chef wanted to be able to get the food really fresh. So we'd pick the wines out in advance. And then I'd sit down with the chef and we'd taste through each wine, and he'd come up with ideas about what might match, and I'd come up with ideas, and we'd bounce off each other. And he'd create a menu around the wines. It was really a lot of fun. And we made some really, really great selections. So, how's everybody doing? Everybody's staying home, staying safe, staying healthy, I hope.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I guess everybody's drinking a lot of wine too. I think we're noticing things ticking up a little bit in the sales department.
A lot of good wine.
Yeah, exactly.
A lot of good wine. That's as it should be. Life's too short, right?
There's no point in saving it. After the Premier wine, there's no point in saving it. This
There you go.
This is the moment.
Absolutely. So I know some of you have the wines that we're tasting today. You're going to taste along with us. That's fantastic. If you don't, that's okay too. You want to drink something else? It's all right. So I guess we'll get into it. I've got my Fusionaire glass. I know Marshall likes his Somm glass. This is my favorite. I use this for all my tastings on Wine Express. Which I guess I'll mention on Wine Express. I do video tastings, been doing them for about 10 years now. So it's just, another way to try to help people understand and appreciate the wines that we're offering. I'll give you some background on the wine, and then I'll do a little tasting on it and talk about, my impressions. So
Josh, is there a charge for doing that wine tasting? Or if we had a group that is kind of our wine group that's been a good number of years fellowship, and we're now doing a Zoom, would you consider sharing that kind of thing with us?
That's something we could talk about, sure. But yeah, this is the first time we're doing it live. Usually I do it with the camera, and if I make mistakes, if I spill something, we can edit it out. So you'll have to bear with me on this. We've got 3 wines today. One's from Bordeaux, one's from Sonoma, and the other one's from Napa. I know we picked these kind of because they're popular on our site. They're all really solid, and they're all really good values. So I think that's always important when you're selecting a wine, that, what you pay for is really, really there in the bottle. And so we're going to taste the Bordeaux first. Everybody cool with that?
Yep.
All right. This is Chateau La Violette, or Chateau, it's just Chateau La Violette. It's 2016. And it's from Mouly in Médoc. So at the risk of boring everybody, I'm going to tell you a little bit about Mouli and Medoc. So Medoc is arguably the most important place in Bordeaux, arguably. 4 of the 5 first growth Bordeaux's are in Medoc. Chateau Lafite Rothschild, Chateau Mouton Rothschild, Chateau Latour, and Chateau Margaux. It's a peninsula. It's bordered on the west by the Atlantic Ocean and bordered on the east by the Gironde River. So the soils have a lot of river gravel, which provides really good drainage, and Cabernet Sauvignon really likes that kind of soil. It lets the roots really go deep, vines struggle a little bit, and the grapes develop slowly, take on a lot of nuance. So you're in this incredible place in Bordeaux with these first growth chateaus and these classified chateaus, and the wines are hundreds of dollars all over the place. And then you stumble upon Mouli, which is just north of Margaux and south of Saint-Julien. And suddenly you can find amazing bargains. You can find wines that are very close in quality to these classified wines, if not better than some, and yet priced like everyday wines. Yeah. So that's what this wine is. So in Mouli, unlike in Margaux, it's a little bit inland from the river, so it's a little bit warmer, and the soils are a mix. So you have some of this gravelly soil that the Cabernet likes, but you also have some of the clay soils that you mostly find over on the right bank, which is great for Merlot, because Merlot likes that clay. It drinks up moisture, gives the vines lots of nice water in the dry season to drink, and it stays cool. So those grapes ripen nicely because it's an early ripening grape. So that cool soil slows it down a little bit, lets it take on more nuance and complexity, right?
Yeah.
So this wine's about a 50-50 mix. What is it, like 51-49, I think, Cab and Merlot. So, you know, what you get when you mix Merlot with Cab is you get a little bit less of the backbone, a little bit less of the firm tannins, and a little bit more of the sort of fleshy berry fruit. And so it's a great combo with Cabernet, because Cabernet's got good, big, bold flavors, but it's also got very often a lot of tannin. So the Merlot kind of tames that a little bit, softens it. This wine gets aged in French oak barrels. I think a portion, certainly new oak, because I'm already smelling the new oak on the nose.
Yeah, for sure.
12 months. Yeah, so the aroma.
Josh, how do you know that it's new oak? What do you usually look for?
Okay. Yeah, the new oak usually expresses itself as either a toast or a vanilla note, or sometimes as kind of a cedary sort of cigar box kind of note. Those are usually aromas that come from the wood,
right,
rather than from the grapes.
And from the new oak too, right? How they toast it and what the kind of wood is. Sometimes it can be vanilla, sometimes it could be coconut, based on what that species of wood is. They give off different characters. Yeah,
so there's a lot of nuance to that. Can get very complicated, but really, it's interesting that they've sort of figured out over time that adding that little nuance of oak flavor to the Cabernet grapes just really complements it so well and just takes the wine to another level. So aromas coming out of the glass. I'm getting those really nice little sort of toasty, woody, and then that black currant.
And one thing that
a little bit of black cherry.
One thing that Josh and I are, always kind of looking for is how intense is a wine, right? Is it super intense where it's jumping out of the glass, or do you have to kind of get your nose in there a little bit and dig for it? And sometimes more elegant and delicate wines, maybe a little bit less intense, which doesn't make them less complex or less delicious, but just don't have that big jumping fruit or
Yeah.
vibrancy out of the glass, right?
So this one's got a lot of intensity.
I think so.
Marshall's talking about some of the things that you do with the WSET when you do tastings. I don't know if anybody's familiar with WSET, the Wine and Spirits Education Trust. One of the things I forgot to mention was that I recently passed the level 3 because you're never too old to learn, right?
That's right.
And Wine Enthusiasts is going to be offering the WSET classes, so I don't think any of you are in the Westchester County, New York area, but if you are, if you have friends there, tell them to sign up, and we'll teach the classes. And learn about wine. It's a lot of fun.
And I'll just add to that, Josh, because we're going to be very surely getting that moving on an online version, so we will be able to offer it out to just about anybody.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Yeah, so we're in the process of getting that going. So.
Right. So with my level 3, I can teach the 1 and 2, and Marshall's going to teach as well, and it's going to be a lot of fun. So
Sign up.
Sorry, got distracted. Where was I? Oh yeah.
Smelling.
Oh, it smells good.
Is anyone drinking this wine along with us? Anyone out there?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
I didn't talk about the color. We want to talk about the color?
Sure.
Color's nice. It's a nice ruby color.
Yeah. Deep.
Looks young.
Yeah. Deep ruby. For sure.
Goes almost all the way to the rim.
Yep.
Really nice. Which is what you'd expect for a wine like this.
Yeah.
Red wines, interestingly, as they get older, they lose color. And white wines gain color. So this wine is nice and vibrant, obviously very youthful color-wise. I'm sorry, I'm fiddling with my chat here because I lost it. Where was I?
This wine has a really nice mix of like red and black cherry fruit, right? Sometimes the Cabernets can go really hard towards the black cherry and black currant, but this has some really nice red fruits that play along with it, and the oak and the spice. And I don't know, for me, this has a really Bordeaux kind of chalky, earthy quality that mixes in, with that fruit, which is what provides that balance, right? Is when you have that earthy and oak and spice and fruit all combining together, when that puts together, a well-made wine like this, that's where the balance kicks in,
Thanks, Marsh. I
Sure.
almost got it back.
Are the wines in this area, they use fermentation very much?
Say it again?
Yeah.
I'm sorry?
Can you say that one more time?
No, I was just asking about fermentation, if they use any whole cluster.
Usually in Bordeaux, they do not. Bordeaux, they're pretty strict about destemming and even then carefully going through and sorting the grapes. So they're just interested in getting those berries in there.
Josh, the one thing that you didn't talk about with this wine, which is really interesting, is the enologist who talked about all those big first growth wines, but the enologist who helped produce this wine.
Right.
It's really interesting.
Yeah, so they hired this very well-known enologist, Eric Aussenet, who's worked with all 4 of the Medoc first growths, and he helped them put together the final blend. So I don't know, how do you beat that?
Yeah. Well, it's just interesting that you're talking about all the big first growths that are right in the area, and here's a guy who's got his hands on most of those wines, and finding a value way to produce something like this it's pretty impressive.
All right, should we taste?
Yes.
Please. I think we all have, except you, Josh.
Very nice. So sort of medium bodied.
Yeah.
The tannins are still a little bit puckery on this,
Right.
but they're nice. They're rounded.
Mhm.
They don't bite at all. Gives the wine a little bit of a chewiness. The berry flavors come out on the mid palate. I get a lot of the black cherry, the black currants,
Yep.
and I get a nice note of that lingering on the finish too. Maybe a little hint of chocolate lingering.
And I get,
So,
and Josh, I get that like really kind of typical chalky, feature on the mouthfeel that comes from these, left back wines, right?
yeah, it's, like I said, Cabernet has those big tannins.
Yeah.
And they can create kind of a drying effect on your palate. But depending on how ripe those tannins are, they can be rounded out and sort of a little bit mellower and just give you kind of a chewy sensation, which is what we're getting here.
Yeah.
And also, but they also provide the wine with the structure that it needs to age a little bit. So, I mean, I'm liking this right now, and certainly you could have this wine now with a meal with steak. But I also see potential for this to age for years in your cellar. So who likes it?
Yeah, who does like it?
Oh, we like it.
We like it. All right.
We got a couple of votes. Good.
Yes.
So, I just wanted to add that I cheated a little on this wine because I wanted to take a sample of it last night, because I remembered when Josh and I tasted it the first time, we went back to it the next day and we liked it even more. And I got to tell you, all those tannins that were kind of there last night are completely softened out today, having been open now for a day and sitting in the cellar.
Well, that's an interesting phenomenon with wine. And sometimes you'll open a wine and you'll say, I don't know, I'm not sure about this. And then 2 hours later, or even sometimes the next day, it's like, wow.
I mean, it was great yesterday.
Can't believe it.
It's totally open.
So I got a question about body. Somebody's asking me if body is simply a measure of alcohol. And the answer to that is not entirely no. Body is certainly an important component to alcohol. But the tannins also add to the body, the sense of body in the wine, as well as the extraction, how much of a core is in the wine, how much of extracted fruit. So those things kind of come together, and you give you a sense of what the body of the wine is. To me, this wine is, like I said, it was medium bodied, and it has those sort of nice round tannins. And so that gives the wine a little bit of an elegance. It doesn't overwhelm your palate, but it lets those flavors come through so that you can enjoy them. So, some people are fans of big-bodied wines, and sometimes big-bodied wines are appropriate depending on what you're eating. But to me, a wine like this just really hits the spot. Should we move on?
Yeah, let's move on.
Let's go.
All right, we're moving on. So wine number 2 is California all the way. Here you go. Just north of Marin County is Sonoma County, right?
Right. We love Sonoma.
What's not to love?
Yeah.
Sonoma is incredible. Sonoma is such an extraordinary place and an amazing place for growing wine grapes. You have an incredible array of microclimates in Sonoma, so you can grow lots of different grapes just incredibly. On the coast, of course, it's right on the ocean, and so you have vineyards that are on these coastal ridges where it's really cold and foggy and windy, and they somehow grow incredible Pinot Noir up there. And then, of course, you have the Petaluma Gap that lets cool air and fog in by the Russian River, and that cools down the Russian River Valley, where you also get really nice Pinot Noir. If you keep going inland, eventually you get to the Mayacamas Mountains, and so that's the borderline between Sonoma and Napa. And Alexander Valley kind of lies right in those foothills of the Mayacamas, and the river runs through it, and so you have all these great alluvial soils again, kind of like what you have in Bordeaux. So Cabernet vines just love that gravelly soil, good drainage, roots go deep, and of course, incredible heat and sunshine. One of the things about California in general is the Mediterranean climate is kind of a perfect climate for grape growing because most of the rain comes during the winter when the vines are dormant. And then during the growing season, it's nice and dry. And so the grapes get to mature and do their thing. The only time you really run into trouble is when you get rain or inclement weather during harvest, which can happen in September, October. But for the most part, it's sort of a perfect setup for growing wine grapes. So anyway, this is Folie à Deux. This is their 2016 Cabernet Sauvignon from the Alexander Valley. So, back in the 1980s, when I visited Napa Valley, Folie à Deux was a tiny little winery right in the heart of Napa. And it was, they had some good wines, but they were very small. So about 10 or so years ago, the Trinchero family bought the Folie à Deux winery. And they made the wines with Napa Valley grapes for a little while, and then eventually they transitioned it to a Sonoma label. So now they make Chardonnay from Sonoma, Pinot Noir from Sonoma, and they make this Cab from Alexander Valley. The Trinchero family has one of the biggest wineries in America. They have incredible amounts of vineyards that they own and have partnerships in, so they can source grapes that are top quality. And that's really what you see in a wine like this. Just really good sourcing, really good focused, intelligent winemaking. And of course, 2016 vintage in California was a really, really great vintage. So it all comes together. All right, I'm looking at the color. The color is actually pretty similar to what we saw in the Bordeaux.
Deep ruby.
Anybody notice a difference?
Deeper.
It is a little deeper.
Clear edges.
Yeah, maybe it's actually a little bit more, I don't know, maybe a hint of violet in this color.
Yeah.
Real like garnet, maybe.
So, and ideally, I'll get a little wine geeky for everyone. So when you're looking at color, you always want to find a real white background, right? So you can gauge one from the other. Because if you put it behind a brown table like I have here or a silver laptop, it's going to be a little bit different. So it just levels the playing field when you always do it behind like a white piece of paper, a white background.
So color's good. Nose is really good.
So this is really intense.
Yeah.
Right? The other one was pretty intense.
It is. It's quite intense.
This one's popping
So
right
black
out of
cherry.
the press.
Yeah. A lot of black cherry on this.
Earthy.
Get a little bit of chocolate. There's kind of a little mineral note in here too, like sort of a whetstone.
Not quite as much oak on this one though, right, Josh? I mean, this one is a lot of fruit.
Yeah, you don't really get the oak.
Yeah, a lot of fruit
on the nose.
some spice, a little floral.
Yeah, nice cherry, nice little bit of that cassis, that black currant in here.
Right, and Josh, when you were playing with your phone before, I was saying that Cabernet a lot of times will have that black cherry, black currant, but sometimes it can bring around that red cherry too, and this one, right, brings a lot of red fruit to the table.
Yeah, and that's kind of what Alexander Valley Cabs are famous for, that really bright fruit.
For sure.
That's right.
And soft tannins.
Mm-hmm.
And the soft tannins, exactly.
Josh, I'm talking to Jim Ferguson here, talking to you from northern Alexander Valley, up in Cloverdale.
Oh, wow.
Nice.
I'm very familiar with AV fruit and AV Cabernet. How do
Nice,
you feel?
welcome.
How do you feel the Alexander Valley stacks up in growing Cabernet for Sonoma County, as far as an AVA?
I think it's the tops as far as growing Cabernet. Well, all right. Alexander Valley is like the biggest grape growing area in Sonoma, right?
Right.
And so there's a lot of Cabernet. And so you can get some that's maybe not the best, and you can get some that's phenomenal. But overall, on average, I think it's probably grows the best Cabernet in Sonoma.
I agree, especially the things that have that western exposure that's up in the eastern
Yes.
foothills, the Geyser Mountain range there.
Geyser, yeah.
Exactly, in those foothills.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's an interesting point. I was going to bring up when we taste the next wine, but let's look at it. You know, the sun rises in the east and it sets in the west, right? So you've got these vineyards going north-south. And so in Alexander Valley, these vineyards are in those western foothills of the Mayacamas Mountains, kind of southwest aspect. But in the morning, the fogs roll in, right? And so as the sun comes up in the east, maybe it's a little cool, maybe the fog's there, maybe they're not getting all that direct sun. But in the afternoon, when that fog's blowing out, the sun is there, sort of really baking these grapes and really giving them good ripeness. And so that's why these grapes growing on the sort of the western side of these valleys can be a lot more ripe, a lot more intense than grapes, say, on the eastern slopes. So good point.
Yeah.
So we like this one?
Yeah.
Everybody like it?
Yeah. Yes.
Who doesn't like Alexander Valley
Right.
Cab?
And you know,
Voluptuous, soft.
and
Yes.
and really provides a great value, right? Because you can have some Alexander Valley cabs, you know, take Jordan, right? Silver Oak, Alexander, you know, some of them are really top dollar and excellent wines. But when you look at the price point of something like this, that you can, you know, have as a
Right.
sort of
This is
everyday wine.
Incredible value, under $20, incredible value. You know, and also
Everybody
think about
needs those Tuesday and Wednesday night wines.
You better believe it.
Yeah. You know, the Bordeaux, I really like the Bordeaux, but to me, the Bordeaux is something that I want to have with a meal. This wine, I can just sip it on its own. Right? Doesn't really need food. It doesn't have any of that, those edges.
Yeah.
Need to be rounded out. It's just really supple, delicious.
Gotta love that forward fruit.
Gino, this is your kind of wine, huh?
Yeah, definitely. This is
The
a
Gino
good-
wine.
Yeah, I already
Big,
knew it was gonna be good.
Fruity.
Jake, yeah, you too, right? This is so part of our Wine Express team that we taste with Gino and Jake, and we can always tell what kind of wine are going to be up, certainly up Gino's alley. A lot of big
Yeah,
fruit.
Gino's fond of nice California wines.
Yeah.
Yeah. They
Even
usually
though
have a
he's
bit
got
of
Italian heritage, don't get
yeah.
an Italian wine. Stick with California.
Yeah. Sometimes you guys know what I like more than I know.
Oh, that's our job, Gino.
That's right. We're supposed to.
Yeah.
All right, so I'm just gonna go back to the Bordeaux, smell it. Yeah, it's quite different. You definitely are smelling more of the oak.
Yeah.
Bordeaux.
Looks more spicy.
And it's even coming through as like some of that sort of pencil lead graphite.
Yeah, the graphite on the Bordeaux, totally.
Mm-hmm.
Which is
And
pretty
then the wonderful
which
cherry notes on that.
is pretty characteristic of like an old world style Bordeaux, right? When it has that graphite and mineral and chalky kind of note. That's kind of what you look
Yeah, and of Medoc Bordeaux for sure.
Yeah. Jake, I'm curious for Jake because Jake goes around different ways. Which one of these two are you into more right now?
The Foley.
The Foley still. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's easy. Well, you know, we're working at home. We're sitting around. We're bored. We want to open something and drink it. That's what.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and
This one
it's
gets the spot for that, right?
it's burger night here tonight, so
There you
yeah,
go.
a little more.
There you go.
Right. This is
Perfect
definitely
for
a
burger
meat
night.
pairing. Yeah.
Anyone else want to cast any votes for people that have these at home? Do you prefer the Bordeaux or the Alexander Valley Cab?
What do you like, Daniel? Oh, they're on mute.
If you want to chime in, just unmute yourself and feel free to just chat out, or you
Yeah.
can message us too.
You're on mute there, Daniel.
I
They're
agree.
both good.
This is a great sipping wine.
Yes,
I-
absolutely.
But I love the taste of the other, and I'd like to get some and keep it for a while.
Exactly. Let it age a little.
Mhm.
Got a vote for Foley from Lori.
Great flavor.
Thanks, Lori.
Dan Harrington, Daniel Harrington, what bottle are you holding up there? Looks like you got something else.
Dave, that's my friend Dave.
I'm Dave.
Oh, Dave. Oh,
Okay, so this is the Bordeaux,
Yeah.
and what I noticed about this, I wasn't so fond of it when we first opened it. It maybe about 10 to 15 minutes into it, we sipped it and gave it a little shot, and it was kind of dull. There was really no smell coming off of it, and I really didn't like it. But then we poured it in the glass and let it sit for about a half hour, and wow, I tell you, it
Yep.
has to be favorites now.
nice.
I agree. It did open up. Yeah.
Makes a big difference.
Totally
Usually
agree.
it's good to decant these wines.
Totally agree.
So you really get that aeration going. It really helps. So I was going to say, if you're buying some of this Chateau Violette to put in your cellar, you're going to have to then, in 3 or 4 years, you're going to blind taste one of your friends with a classified Bordeaux that costs 5 times the price,
Right.
and see if they can tell the difference.
I like the Bordeaux myself.
Yeah, it's solid, right?
I agree letting it set out for a bit is a great idea, but I
Yeah.
like the Bordeaux a lot.
Good. Yeah. Bordeaux is like one of my early favorites. Got to experience some great Bordeaux's early on in my wine drinking career, and just kind of fell in love. Been there a few times. It's a beautiful, beautiful, magical place.
And you know, and just as you guys are all noticing, most wines, do need a little time. They need a little aeration. Whether it's 5 minutes, 10 minutes, sometimes more, sometimes 30 minutes to an hour in a decanter. But it almost always will help just open up and get those complexities out and soften up the tannins a little bit, which is what we're all looking for.
So someone's asking if all red wines benefit from aeration. Isn't there some kind of criteria? So I'm going to say, for the most part, all red wines will benefit from aeration, except sometimes very old wines.
Bingo.
Wines that have aged 20 years or more. Sometimes when you aerate them, they kind of start to fade.
Yeah.
So young wines, definitely. Wines maybe 10 years old, definitely. When you start really dipping into the oldsters, you got to be a little careful.
What about Pinots?
You got to check them out on the nose right away. What's that?
Pinots.
What about Pinots? I've always heard that you really don't need to, and often it's ill-advised to aerate a Pinot too much.
It depends, but if it's a young Pinot, yeah, the aeration will help. Older Pinots, again, they're going to be delicate. So you have something that's really mature. You may want to decant it off the sediment, but you'll do that carefully, and you probably then want to drink it right away.
Okay.
Sure.
More questions? Gino's busy drinking.
Josh, can you possibly?
So let's move on to Napa Valley, shall we?
Oh, Jim has a question.
I was just going to ask Josh
Okay,
if he could kind of talk about maybe the differences between, aromas in young wines and, the development of bouquets in older wines over a period of time, say 10 years, and you pop that cork and let that genie out of the bottle. Talk about differences between aromas and bouquets, if you might.
Sure. Oh, absolutely. Well, I mean, bouquet, usually you talk about just sort of like the fresh fruit notes that come off the nose initially. Aromas, you're really sort of kind of breaking that down and saying, okay, what do I really smell here? In a young wine, young red wine, you're going to smell berry fruits, cherries, sometimes dark berry fruits, sometimes plums. It really depends on the wine, but it's for the most part going to be a real kind of fruit-focused aromas on the nose. As the wine ages, you're going to get sort of dried fruit, right? Instead of like a fresh strawberry, you might get dried strawberry, or you might get dried cherry notes. And then you're also going to get some earthy notes. You might get like notes of like truffle, or sometimes you'll get like a forest floor aroma. That's kind of a famous aroma that you get in mature Burgundies from Pinot Noir. And sometimes you'll get like a smokiness that will come along with this. So you'll get more sort of layers of aromas in a wine when it's mature. And it's one of the great things about letting your wines age is experiencing the change and experiencing all that additional nuance that comes out in the wine. Is that sort of
yeah, thank you. That's why we have to buy a case at a time, right? From you?
That's right.
Right. And put some away, because when you put those away, you pull them out 5-10 years later, it's like, wow, a whole different experience.
And it's and you're really right, Jim. And I saw somebody out there was using the Coravin, Michael, right? Michael Moore was using the Coravin, and and it's a great tool for that reason, right? Because if you have a case of something or a handful of bottles and you want to try and kind of catch it, somewhere in its peak, but you don't want to have to open all 6 bottles, right? So you can Coravin one into and have it for over a month or whatever it is, and take another one, and then kind of find where that peak is or where you enjoy it the most, and that way you can maximize your enjoyment, of those specific wines. So that's really the ideal kind of tool for what you were talking about and finding the right time. So good for you.
Thanks.
Cool. Okay, we're going to Napa.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So,
Gino's like.
Technique. This is a red blend. Red blends have become probably the most popular category these days.
Brighter light.
The unique thing about this particular red blend is the grapes are all sourced from a vineyard in the Stag's Leap district. Somebody was asking earlier about Stag's Leap and Stag's Leap district. The reason they call it Stag's Leap district is because when they created the AVA, American Viticultural Area, there were already wineries that had Stag's Leap in their name. And so to distinguish the place from the wineries, they added the word district to the end of the AVA. So that's why you see Stag's Leap District. So the Stag's Leap District is a very unique spot in Napa Valley. It's on the western side of the valley. So we talked about how on the western side, you get a lot of that late sunshine that comes down and ripens those grapes beautifully. But what's unique about Stag's Leap is there's some topographical features, different hills and mountains sort of surround it. And so when the cool air and the fog comes up from the San Pablo Bay, it sort of gets trapped in there. And so you have a really nice wide diurnal temperature difference. So that's the difference between temperatures during the day and at night. And what that does is it allows those grapes that are getting all that sunshine during the day and ripening up like crazy to really just slow down and retain good acidity and take on lots of nuance when those temperatures drop at nighttime. So that's what made Stag's Leap its own unique area. That's how it got its own AVA, because of that topography and that interesting microclimate that occurs. The soils are kind of a mix of what you find in Napa Valley: alluvial soils, some volcanic soils, clay soils. A lot of soils that are volcanic and have similar sort of draining properties to alluvial. So Cabernet does really well there. Again, you have good drainage, you get the roots to go deep. So the Cab really takes on a lot of nuance and ripens slowly, long growing season. So obviously we all know there are great Cabernets coming out of Stag's Leap. This one's not entirely Cabernet. It's about, I think, 40%. And it's got also Merlot and Petit Verdot. and Malbec. So it's a pretty nice sort of Bordeaux blend. It's got 4 of the 5 Bordeaux grapes. And Marshall's going to ask you what the 5th one is.
Always. Got to know. There's 5 grapes in Bordeaux. What's the 5th? What's missing?
Cab Franc.
Cab Franc. Correct.
Cab Franc, exactly.
But
The other Cabernet.
For extra credit, what was the former 6th grape that could have been included in the Bordeaux blend?
That's tricky, Marsh.
Anyone know?
Meunier.
Ah, Carmenere, exactly. Carmenere.
Wow.
Meunier.
Good job.
Well, thank you.
So, Cab Franc is actually a grape that you find in Napa Valley, but not that often. It's kind of an early ripening grape. They grow it a lot on the right bank in Bordeaux because it's a little cooler there and it ripens up even when Cabernet Sauvignon won't. Petit Verdot is a late ripening grape. Adds some intensity, some backbone, some color, some perfume. And so in the Stag's Leap, you're going to expect good Cab, and of course the Petit Verdot is going to ripen up well, and of course Merlot kind of does well anywhere. You just have to pick it early, and it brings those nice lush sort of blackberry notes. So what about the color on this one? It's real vibrant. Wow.
Mhm.
It's a real nice.
It's also
Ruby
2
color
years,
on it.
right? 2 years younger than the other 2. So without any bottle age, really.
That's right.
Really, so.
That's right. This is
That's right.
the 2018 vintage. I forgot to mention that.
Yeah.
2018, great vintage for Napa Cabs. So that's good. They're starting to come on. Grab them. They're really good.
So, Josh, you mentioned one thing I just want to touch on, and you talked about the cool, the diurnal with the acid. And we don't talk about acid in red wines all that much, but all these wines, to have balance and structure and ageability, they have to have, an acid backbone. Otherwise, they just become flabby and, overly alcohol and tannic. And so that acid is so important in these regions, and especially
That's
here
good.
with those.
Yes.
Right.
Yes. Thank you for pointing that out.
Yeah.
That's one of the things that you'll find in the Bordeaux. A little bit more of that acid coming through as opposed to in the California wines, which are going to be riper. But yeah, that's why you want to slow down that ripening so you retain the acid and the wine doesn't get sort of flabby and insipid. It's still kind of snappy and bright.
Exactly.
Cleanses your palate for that next bite of food, right, Josh?
Precisely.
I believe it.
That's what, that's why wine is so much better with food than beer. I mean, beer doesn't have acidity.
Totally.
Mm-hmm.
But wine does.
Or bourbon.
Here.
Yeah. All right. So what are we smelling here? I got like a raspberry note on this.
Yeah.
Get like
Raspberry,
toasty
blackberries.
licorice.
Licorice. Yeah, get some of that.
Yeah,
licorice.
there's definitely getting that sort of toasty vanilla.
I get a little dark cocoa on there too, though.
Yes. Yeah, some chocolate.
Yep. A little hint of blackberries from that dollop of Malbec in there.
Interesting. Yeah, I think they do a dose of new oak on this. Just going to check my notes here. See if it mentions the, yeah, so 14 months. I think they use about 30% new oak on this.
Yeah.
That's
Definitely adds a dimension to this wine for sure.
Yeah.
The thing about oak aging in a wine is if your grapes don't have really good flavor and good intensity, then the oak just overpowers them, and that's all you taste. So you have to have good fruit in order to do the oak aging, and it all has to sort of come together and balance properly.
Always comes back to balance.
all about balance.
All about balance. Exactly.
Exactly. Life is about balance.
Yep.
Yeah.
Working from home is about All right, do we taste this?
We're all 2 steps ahead of you, Josh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Balancing.
Welcome to the party.
We're all balancing.
Anyone notice anything they want to cull out? On the technique, something you notice compared to the Folie à Deux or compared to the Violette?
Oh,
Is
that's
it bigger or more lean?
real strong tannins.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
it's young, obviously.
They are
Younger.
Yeah.
Younger.
very.
This is a big, bold wine.
But not chocolate.
Yeah.
To me, this is full bodied. This is full
A
bodied.
little more berry for
It's got,
bite. This says it's bite. I don't know what that means. That's what
Well-
I think, but I don't know how that translates.
Go ahead, Josh. Want to talk about bite?
Dries the mouth.
I don't want your dog to bite you.
No. Frankie's good. She just wants a sip. She just wants a sip.
So here we are. We went from Sonoma with that wonderful soft velvety fruit over to Napa Valley, where you get the real muscle, right? And so that's what this wine's showing us. Even though it's got quite a bit of Merlot in it to soften that out, but I'm sure the Petit Verdot kind of hits that as well. Malbec can carry some backbone. So yeah, this is kind of real Napa blend, right?
Unfortunately, I don't have this
Good.
bottle in front of me, gentlemen
Wow.
and ladies.
Ah,
But does this fall into the Meritage Society being a blend, or are they not a part of that?
So
they're not a part of
Can you
that.
talk about that a little bit,
That's
Josh?
kind of, but they are using Bordeaux grapes, so
Yeah,
theoretically, if they want to join the society,
yeah.
they could do that. That's kind of fallen out of fashion.
yeah,
Yeah,
it could qualify, under it. Their whole legislation on the meritage of how they do it has gotten, a little. It has to be their highest blend. They just put a lot of rules behind it, and it almost feels like
Right,
the
and so it
break
kind
off.
of shut people out.
Yeah, it almost feels like the break off of Super
You could-
Tuscans, where it's just easier to call it a red blend with Bordeaux grapes than to call it a meritage.
Right.
Right. Yeah, and you couldn't throw other grapes in. If you wanted to throw a little Petit Syrah in or a little Syrah, then suddenly you couldn't call it Meritage anymore.
That's correct.
But it's not uncommon for wineries to make a flagship wine that's a Bordeaux blend. Think Insignia, Quintessa, wines like that.
Beautiful wine.
Sort of top of the line wines that are not just straight cab, but they're blends of these great Bordeaux grapes that grow in the Napa Valley.
Josh, why don't you talk about Trevor and some of the other wines and
Right. So the winemaker that makes this wine, Marshall's referring to, Trevor Sheehan. He's a very, very clever, very talented winemaker, and he's able to source grapes from really, really fine locations in Napa Valley, like Stag's Leap, like Oakville, like Rutherford, and put together a solid wine that he puts in the bottle for an amazing value. I don't know. What's the price on this one? It's like $25, right?
this
Yeah.
is 30, 25.
I mean, you're not going to see Stag's Leap wines, Stag's Leap cab blends for that kind of price.
Right.
It's sort of amazing. And it's good juice. So we love him.
Yeah,
and we love his wines.
And if you guys have had any of our other Wine Express wines in the past, anything from like the Navigator line or 29 and Oak, Octopada, he makes his own kind of labels and sources just great juice from around Napa.
Actually cheaper than that.
What's that?
5 or $6.
Yeah.
We got a great comment from Nancy Moser, who's doing a chocolate cheese taste comparison.
I see that. Nice.
And she says that the chocolate was great with the Chateau Violette and the Gruyere
no kidding.
cheese and the bread, fresh made bread. Did you make that at home, Nancy? A lot of people are baking bread right now, but I haven't had the
That's
ambition
right. That's
to
what
do
they're
it yet.
Everybody's home baking. I know my wife's making muffins every day.
We just got a bunch of sourdough starter.
There you go.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
You wouldn't expect a Bordeaux be something you could pair with chocolate, right?
Totally.
But sometimes, if it's a dark chocolate, if it's a bitter chocolate, it can really be a perfect pairing. So that's nice and different. I like that.
I want to go back to the Bordeaux.
I do prefer.
So what are we
mine-
going to drink? What are we going to eat with this this Stag's Leap, this monster here?
Could you mention Trevor's last name again?
Yep.
Yes, Sheehan.
Sheehan. It's probably on the write-up of the wine too, on the link.
I think
that's
it's on
chat.
in the description. I usually throw him in there.
And this.
I just dropped it into the chat for everyone.
There you go.
Trevor Sheehan. Yeah.
And this is a I think everyone agree, a steak wine, right? This is a beefy wine with big fruit, big tannins, big alk, and you know those big cuts of steak really match up with these because the tannins and the oh, Daniel's waving at us. Daniel, you got to go off mute though. Or Dave, that's his buddy Dave, right?
Yeah. Okay, you guys hear us?
I got you now. Go ahead.
Yeah, wait. Dan has got to try the what was that one?
Oh yeah, I tried the Navigator. It was wonderful. I'm looking forward to the new one this year.
Yeah.
I also have the Octopada. I haven't tried that one just yet. Got your last 4 bottles of it, but I was wondering.
Oh, cool.
Nice.
With the I had a question on the Hungarian oak. I know you said coconut and vanilla, but does the Hungarian oak impart any special flavor to the wine?
Hungarian oak is more similar to French oak than to American oak.
Yeah.
Usually they say that in general the American oak has a wider grain, and so it can provide sort of more aggressive tannins and flavors. That's going to vary depending on how toasted the wood is. But the Hungarian oak is sort of an alternative to French oak, usually a little bit less expensive, but also can impart a similar, more subtle character.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
To make it simple. Yep.
Thank you.
And I have one too, Josh. I'm a simple man. I like a nice mouthfeel. I like a blend. I'm very big on blends. We live next to Napa Valley.
Okay.
We're only an hour and a half away. But what really gets me is this wine that tastes great and it's 15% alcohol. I love it.
Yeah.
You know, it's funny. I was just going to bring that up because we were talking about how this wine is really good and how balance is so important. And at 15% alcohol, you would think that would really stand out. And you'd taste it and you'd think, oh, this is too intense, too much alcohol. But it's not because the fruit is so intense, the tannins are in balance, and that acidity is there. So everything comes together. And the wine balances beautifully, and it tastes great, and you don't notice that high alcohol.
And when we were talking, and Dan and Dave, when we were talking about that weight and the alcohol and the pairing with the steak, that's another reason why these big fruit, big tannin, big alcohol wines need those big pieces of meat to, you know, cooperate and complement each other, so that the tannins and the fat and proteins, they kind of almost melt on your mouth. They bind, you know, on your palate.
Yeah.
And my dog Frankie.
Yeah, the tannin combines with the protein in the steak and softens. You know, but also aeration helps, and of course, as we mentioned, a few years in the bottle lets those tannins come down a bit, lets everything sort of come together, and you get a whole new experience. So
Josh,
if you have these wines, I was just gonna say, if you have these wines, or if you're planning to buy some, plan to throw a couple of bottles in your cellar. You'll be happy you did. I'm sorry, go ahead.
yeah, so I was just, you may have said this in the beginning, but I don't recall why you picked these 3 wines to compare. And I'm kind of interested.
Yeah,
in
it's funny. In some ways, it was sort of random, but in other ways, it was, well, we wanted sort of 3 sort of mid-priced, solid wines that reflect incredible value, and that I really like, and that our customers really are taking to. So that's kind of how we picked these 3.
But you definitely
If you
have.
want to go crazy,
You
don't
definitely
pick
have
out something
progression.
really crazy.
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry?
Interrupting. You definitely have a progression here from the Bordeaux through the Technique wine in terms of the
Yeah.
of tannins. So obviously that was
Yeah.
Body.
You know, we decided on the tasting order, well, knowing that the technique was going to be the biggest, most tannic. And, you know, the Bordeaux is overall more supple, a little more elegant. And so we thought we'd start with that.
Mm-hmm.
And then the Foley kind of fell in the middle.
And if anyone hasn't gone back to the Bordeaux, I mean, just in the 30 minutes we've been sitting here, I went back to it. It's opened up. I mean, it keeps expanding. It's amazing how much this wine just improves with aeration. And
so how many hours is that yours has been open?
it's about 27 hours at this point, I think, Josh.
27 hours and 36 minutes, right?
Yeah.
Great, we'll have lots of time.
That's right. But Josh
Yeah.
is right.
The nose is tremendous.
And that's a great question about what wines we selected. And Josh, you know, we all talked about it. And I know for me, you know, I have my friends and family, and they're all, you know, hey, we're home, we need wine, we're looking for value, right? Right now, you know, whether it's expensive or inexpensive, you know, people are, you know, we're home, we're consuming more. It's what's going on. It's the trend. And so the value wines that are out there, and these are three of really all of our favorites, you know, across the board on our Wine Express team. So
that brings up a question though. If we do this again, are these the kinds of wines that you'd want to see us tasting, or would you have something else in mind?
Good question.
Well, from our perspective, we're not sophisticated enough to really have anything is useful in terms of learning more. So whatever we pick, I guess a variety of different approaches is what we'd like.
Right.
You know, let's taste some whites or some rosés or something like that.
Sure.
So forth.
All right. Yes, in some ways these were similar because they all have Cabernet and Merlot in them, right?
Eric,
but we didn't want to go crazy and taste really high-end wines that, you know, a lot of people can't afford.
Yeah.
I was just getting ready to say, appreciated your sensitivity to something that was pretty reasonable, but yet delicious.
Oh, thank you. And that's kind of what we try to focus on at Wine Express, to bring value.
You know, it's good.
Yeah, we offer a lot of high-end wines that people want, but we try to have a really good stock on wines like these that really just deliver value.
You know, it seems to me we spend way too much money on wine. And when we see wines in this price range, which we normally wouldn't really look at, simply because we don't know any better, it's very useful to have that information. So thank you.
Oh, good. Well, you're welcome. Yeah, you know, you're shopping for Bordeaux and you see Mouly, you grab it.
Okay, all right.
And really to your point is that it's hard if you don't taste it, and you have to really try wine, right? It's very hard to know what you like if you don't give certain wines a try. And so that's why Josh's videos are, you know, as in depth as they are, because he really tries to tell you and bring in.
At our age is remembering that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Take
There's
pictures.
a lot of wine out there. Yeah, unfortunately.
This is my parents all the time. They take pictures of the bottles and they send it to me. And can you get me this wine? Do you guys have this wine? Do you have a deal on this wine? See what we can do.
Yeah, you know, and they get real geeky. You got to take notes and stuff, right?
Well, that's right, actually, and I do keep notes.
Good.
Problem is, I don't actually find them that useful. Although occasionally I go back through and I grade the wines, but you know, how you feel about a wine from day to day is so different that you hardly know if there's any credence to what you've written.
You know, and also depends on what you're eating, and you know, a lot of factors
and the mood.
involved. Yeah, food changes wine completely. You can have a wine. I was drinking an incredible Pinot Noir the other day, and I sat down to dinner, and I had it was like a spaghetti bolognese, and I'm eating the spaghetti, and I'm sipping the wine. I'm thinking, I can't taste this wine at all. It's like suddenly the wine was useless. I had to go find something else. But that's That's kind of one of the beauties of wine is the variety, different experiences.
Part of the problem is by the time I realize I like a particular year, it's gone.
Well, that can happen too. Yeah. And that's the other sort of remarkable thing about wine is every year is a new vintage, right?
That's right. Yeah.
They come and go. One of the great things, obviously, about California is that the vintages don't vary that much. You have great vintage after great vintage after great vintage.
Okay.
In Bordeaux, you got all that ocean influence, all that fog and wind and rain, so there's a lot more variation. And that's true in a lot of the old world areas. In Italy, you can have similar variations with weather and such that less likely in California. I'm a big fan of Oregon Pinot Noir. Oregon Pinot Noir is a real cool climate wine. It's got, you know, that beautiful acidity and those bright fruit notes. But again, you have a lot of vintage variation in Oregon wines. Some of the vintages are so cool that you know, the wines really just show a lot of earthiness initially, and you really have to wait for them to kind of develop over time. You don't get those bright fruit notes right away. So
I'm just a little curious on some of our panel and what they like best. I don't know if they've had the chance to taste all three of these head to head. Erica, what do you think there of our tasting? What was your favorite of the three?
Can you hear me okay? Because I moved rooms.
A little muted, but we can hear you.
Okay. Well, people were wondering if we know when the next vintage of Navigator's coming in. I don't know if we know yet.
Navigator, well, the Navigator we have is 2018.
Yeah.
So that's the current vintage. That's going to be going for a while.
Wow, yeah.
I think
we sold through. I think there's more coming next couple days. So it'll be back.
I kind of like the foliage. That's my fave.
Nice.
Yeah, that's the easy drinker.
Yeah.
You don't need food. You just sit there and sip it, right?
Jake, what about you?
Yeah, having had all three, like the technique is my favorite by far. You know, it's really big. Yeah,
and I know Gino's his technique.
Yeah, definitely. Easy choice.
What
about you, Josh?
In a 1, 2, or 3 in the chat. Which is your favorite?
You know, I like all of them.
Say again, Erica?
Which is if everyone wants to drop in a vote, a 1, 2, or 3.
Great idea. I went back to the Bordeaux. I think the Bordeaux is my favorite.
Bordeaux's dynamite.
Violet.
I don't know. This is tough.
I got a 3.
I can't vote. I love them all.
I know Glenn's out there. Glenn, drop your vote in there. Which one are you liking out of these two?
Let's see.
A little bit about old world versus new world. There's a question about kind of what the differences are.
I didn't hear. Say it again.
The question about the difference between old world and new world.
Okay. Yeah. That's kind of a wine geeky reference.
Yeah.
Talking about old world, new world. So old world, you're talking pretty much talking about Europe, right? France, Spain, Italy, Portugal. That's the old world. Wines have been growing there for a long time, and the wines all obviously have their own distinct styles, but
That's great.
they can have also a similarity to them. Some, usually a little bit more subtle on the fruit side, a little bit less fruity, and a little bit more backbone, a little more acid. New World wines, Australia, New Zealand, America, those South America, those wines for the most part, and if you're, it's like crazy generalization, but on the whole, perhaps they maybe show more of a fruit character in the wine. So
Josh, that was my question. And it was really meant to be something that I would like you guys to think about doing on the next one of these, is kind of a comparison. Only because it just seems like the new world is becoming more old world-ish in many contexts, and the old world is trying to become very much more new world.
Well,
So that,
that's interesting.
It's like it's not what it used to be, for sure.
And you know, winemaking and wine growing is always going to be evolving. But we did show kind of a unique comparison of old world, new world, looking at the Chateau Violette versus the Folie à Deux. You have this wine with nuance, with elegance, more acidity, and then you have this wine with all this lush fruit. Really, that's, you know, the emphasis on the New World wine.
Right.
So you see that difference right there. But
and
yeah,
Carl,
more comparisons like that are interesting.
And Carl, I think that's a great point, because you do have a lot of crossover, and that's sort of what led to like a super Tuscan, you know, movement out of Chianti, that they didn't want to follow the old world rules and they wanted to make the new world style wine. And then you have, you know, wineries like Jordan in the middle of Alexander Valley that want to, you know, follow more of an old world sort of style. So I think that's a great concept. And it's an interesting dynamic that, like Josh said, that goes on in the wine world right now.
Yeah, and you know, as temperatures start to continue to increase, it's
I
going
suspect
to see a lot of leveling out.
Too, you're right.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And Josh, I'm a wine novice, but I hardly ever buy a wine that you don't taste and I see the video on. And I have loved your videos of small wineries and things that you say are kind of hard to get. Domaine de Larnesque.
Larnesque.
Yeah.
Right.
That was a goodie.
That was a goodie.
Jesse M, I think is the name of that.
Burgundy?
A Burgundy, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I loved Quaking Hills, Payton's Patch.
Oh, yeah.
Oh.
Wow.
Blast from
You
the
go way
past.
back.
We wish we could get that back.
Yeah.
Right. Those have been some of our favorite, and we got cases of them at the time. So we've really
good
gotten
for you.
Yeah. So I love it when you get little finds and things that we don't get everywhere.
Well, we're gonna keep doing it. So keep watching. That's great. Thank you for that.
Yeah. Stamari also.
Yeah.
A Nero Davila.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that's really good.
There's a really good one actually coming tonight, a Cabernet that we found, this reserve 2017 Napa that wasn't really out there, that Josh sourced out. So that'll be, I think, emailing out tonight or tomorrow. It's another one of those crazy value.
Yeah, that's certainly one of my favorite parts of this job is finding those kinds of wines and bringing them out to you.
We make little flashcards.
Really? What do they say?
That's a great idea.
So I don't know if you can read that or not, but it tells the date that I bought them, what percentage in Josh's notes, and then what we ate with them and when we drank them, who we drank them with, how much they cost, all kind of things, so that I can look back and see years ago what we had.
That's amazing.
That's a great thing to do.
Awesome.
That's like the wine album, where you say the table maybe and you make those notes. That's great.
Right. It was
you can reminisce.
Yep.
That's fun. And let's see, somebody saying one of the favorites was the Rhoda. Remember the Rhoda?
Oh, the Rhoda.
That was incredible. I went to Rhoda, with this great guy who was one of my sources that I worked with, and it was right across the road from Turley.
Yeah.
We went to the Turley tasting room, we tasted wines, then we went right across to Rhoda, and we found this great wine, brought it back. It was
Rhoda, that was a good one.
Really fun.
Cool.
Does fruit or winemaking style play a bigger role in New World and Old World flavor? Well, so I think definitely fruit plays a bigger role in New World. but winemaking is always going to play an important role. You know, there's sort of a philosophy now where a lot of winemakers, a lot of really good winemakers, talk about how the wine is made in the vineyard, and they focus very carefully on how the grapes are grown and, you know, how they prune things and green harvests and trellising and making sure that the grapes that they bring in are exactly what they want. And then they kind of let the whole winemaking process take place without too much intervention. That's more, I guess, an old world idea initially, because that's how they would make wines way back when. But there's so much knowledge now and so much technology that, you know, it all kind of weighs in here and there, depending on, you know, what you're growing and where you are. But, you know, fruit expression is something that's, I think, really important in wines. You know, like I was saying, if you're oak aging a wine where the fruit doesn't really have the intensity of flavor to stand up to the oak, then you've got something that's just really not going to work. So the fruit expression, I think, is really important. And I always feel like if I'm tasting a wine, I want to taste the character of the grapes in that wine. The Cab character, the Zin character, the Pinot Noir character. And I think a lot of winemakers agree with me on that.
Josh, you know,
You
maybe
know, in old world, there's a lot of talk about terroir and how you're tasting the terroir, you're tasting the earth, and you're tasting where the grapes are grown. In new world, it's probably less about terroir and more about the actual fruit. I'm sorry, did I interrupt something?
No, I interrupted you. I was just going to say, maybe to get a little geeky again, can we go back? You know, obviously all three of these wines are very Cabernet based. Can you tell the folks about the origin of Cabernet and what two grapes that it actually came from?
All right, so it came from a red grape and a white grape.
That's right.
And Cabernet Sauvignon Blanc was one, and
Correct.
I can't remember what the red grape was.
Come on. Yeah, Franc.
Yeah, Cab Franc.
Yeah.
Somehow they got crossed in a vineyard somewhere, and you got Cabernet Sauvignon.
Wasn't that a beautiful thing?
And it's interesting. Yeah, it was, and it's interesting that you would get such an incredibly intense red grape with a white grape as a parent. Just shows you how amazing nature is.
Exactly.
Is that your favorite grape, Cab Sauv?
No, I would say if I was on that desert island, Petite Syrah.
There you go.
Yeah.
Petite Syrah. All right. You know, it's funny.
Like it.
I like Petite Syrah. Marshall loves Petite Syrah. We've tried to bring in some Petite Syrahs, and we just don't get a response.
They're a hard sell.
Yeah.
So it's maddening.
Yeah.
Hey,
but it's also one that needs to age, right? It needs some bottle age.
Daniel Harrington and Dave, you guys need to unmute yourself. I see you raising your hand and holding up your bottle, but you're muted again. You got to unmute yourself.
Okay, I unmuted them.
Yep, there you go.
Hey. Okay, I'm still really liking this technique here. And what I think I would pair that with is a nice rack of ribs, some spare ribs with some Chinese 5-spice on there. Really give it a nice kick.
Nice.
But you said you're going to do this.
And this is a wine that'll...
Go ahead. Go ahead,
This
Josh.
will stand up to that.
Yes.
Sure.
Yeah.
I'm going to say this is a wine that'll stand up to that kind of food.
And also,
you have my Bolognese experience.
yes, Josh. You said that you're going to be doing this again, and what I love red wines. I like a Noir, but I think that this French wine here is some of the best French I ever tasted. And also, I'm a big fan of a white blend, of a white King of the Whites. I like a Chardonnay. I like a nice toasty, full mouth-bodied Chardonnay that's got a woodsy on the end of it too. So if you recommend something like that, that would be nice.
Man after my own heart. I love those wines myself, you know, and that's not really PC these days. You know, those big oaky Chardonnays, everybody like shuns them, right? I love them.
I mean,
so good for you.
I think the moral of the story is that everyone wants us to come back and do another round with some new wines.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Sure.
A lot of fun this has been.
So
Well,
glad
we're
you
all
all could
the
join
hashtag
us.
staying home, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Yes.
Let's do it tomorrow again.
Yes.
No, I got to get more wine.
Definitely.
We have 3 days worth of wine here to drink first.
Thanks everybody for joining us.
Yeah.
We really appreciate you joining us and chiming in. This was a lot of fun.
Thank you for doing it.
This was
Thank
great.
you very much.
Thank
This
you.
was awesome.
Thanks so much,
Thing while we're
everyone.
home alone.
Cheers.
Thank
Cheers,
you.
guys.
Very
Good
cheerful
health.
to be home alone.
Cheers.
Cheers. Be well, guys.
Be well. See you soon.
Yes,
Stay
absolutely.
safe. Stay healthy. Take
Beautiful Alexander Valley.
care. There you go. Okay, guys.
Bye, everyone.
Juice.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye, Josh.
Bye.